she's on mute.
Shelley, can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay.
All right, seeing as it is 7 o'clock, we will call the meeting to order. Welcome to the meeting of the Wilmington Board of Selectmen. Today is Tuesday, October 13th, 2020. All members are present. I did want to acknowledge that all members of the board are wearing an item of pink in recognition of October being Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I wanted to thank our friends at WCTV as well as John O'Neill and Andrew Fredette from the Wilmington IT department. And I did want to pause at the start of the meeting to recognize that on October 3rd, we did lose a very well-liked and very well-respected member of our community. Laura Kyra passed away at age 95. She was a very long-time community volunteer in Wilmington, and she's the founder of the Order of the Sons of Italy Lodge in Wilmington. She was the matriarch of the Kyra family and, in many respects, a matriarch to the community in Wilmington. So our condolences go out to you, Mr. Kyra, and your entire extended family and friends. And you're certainly mourning with you, and we wish you and your family the best as you grieve during this difficult time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And ask that we now pause for a moment of silence for Laura Kyra. All right, to get started, pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, members of the public who wish to watch and listen to the meeting may do so in the following manner. WCTV, Channel 9, Comcast, Xfinity, Channel 37, Verizon Fios, and live stream at wctv.org. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted except for the portion of the meeting designated for public comment. But every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. Members of the public who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may also do so via telephone by dialing 1-646-558-8656 and enter meeting ID 895-8569-7337, then press pound and press pound again at the next voice prompt. Members of the public attending this meeting virtually will be allowed to make comments if they wish to do so during the portion of the meeting designated for public comment by following the steps previously noted, then press *9 on their telephone keypad. This will notify the meeting host that the caller wishes to speak. All callers using this feature will be placed in queue in the order they enter the prompt. In the event that, despite our best efforts, we are not able to provide for real-time access, we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as we are able. And I ask that my colleagues join me in pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we have the transmitting of the Treasury warrants. We have 14, 14A, 15, and 15A. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bendel and seconded by Ms. O'Mahony. Discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All in favor? Unanimous. Passes. We do have the approval of minutes for October 28, 2019.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Kyer, seconded by Mr. Bendel. Discussion?
I'm going to abstain.
Mr. DePalma is going to be abstaining. Further discussion? Seeing none, we will call for the vote. All in favor? All opposed? And Mr. DePalma, you will be abstaining. So we have 4 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstaining. Next, we have public comments. It has been some time since we have met in person and had any members of the audience, so we will now check to see if there are any individuals who were able to make it for public comment this evening.
You could have one, but they just left the meeting.
So we did have nobody show up for public comment this evening. Mr. Fredette, did we have anybody who's online?
Not currently, no.
Okay, I will wait a minute. Again, if anyone wants to speak during public comment, you may do so by dialing 1-646-558-8656. You'll then have to enter the meeting ID 895-8569-7337. You'll then need to press pound and press pound again at the next voice prompt, and then hit *9. So we have no one who has called in for public comment, so we will move to our first appointment, which is with Haki Dengisley of Pizza Days Incorporated regarding a request for a common victual license for the property located at 206 Ballard Vale Street, Unit 4.
Hi, everybody.
Good evening. Is it Mr. Dengisley?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to make sure I pronounced that correctly. So we want to hear a little bit about what you're hoping to do here.
Okay, my company name is Pizza Days. I've been on business 15 years in Massachusetts. I have a 4 more store around this area: Burlington, Medford, Alston, Revere. And I decided to open one more in Wilmington. I used to live here. Then I'm ready to serve to everyone. And hopefully after this COVID situation, we're going to have more business.
We certainly appreciate you opening up under difficult circumstances. I want to
Yes.
open it up to members of the board for any questions they might have.
No, Mr. Chair, I have no questions, other than to say that I've been to one of your other venues, Pizza Days, I think in Burlington.
Yeah, it can be Wien Street.
It's very good.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to it coming here to Wilmington.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Thank you. I just wanted to say best of luck to you, and I wanted to thank you for choosing Wilmington to conduct your business, and we wish you well.
Thank you.
Mr. De Palma.
Good evening. What are your store hours going to be?
Right now, 10 to 10.
10 to 10?
Yeah,
I wish you the best of luck.
thank you.
Just when do you anticipate opening?
We already open.
Oh, okay.
We already open, but we don't have a seating right now. The health
Okay.
department, we passed the health department last week. So we need, we open.
Good luck.
We did soft opening, so go easy right now.
All right, so we do have a recommendation from Shelley Newhouse, the health director, recommending approval. We do have a recommendation from Al Spalding, the inspector of buildings, recommending approval as well. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the application for a common victualer's license.
Sure.
Motion by Mr. De Palma, seconded by Mr. Kyra. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous. Good luck, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Just note for the board that after the meeting, if I've got the license for the board members to sign, then we can get it out to our
Perfect.
applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Our next appointment is with Shelley Newhouse, our health director, and William Kavanaugh, our fire chief, for an update on COVID-19. Hi, Ms. Newhouse.
Good, it's weird, I can't see any of you, so I'm just talking to my computer screen.
Makes you feel any better, I'm looking in the opposite direction because you're right behind me.
Okay, it's been a busy 2 weeks, well, it's been a busy 8 months, but it's been, our cases went up, as you guys, everyone has probably seen. I did post, today that we had 17 cases, which goes down from my previous post last week of 20, but I got 3 more in tonight, so really we're back up to 20 again. And that's how it happens. There's days that, like tomorrow we'll have people come off, and we'll probably have more people come on. I'm having a lot of little clusters of businesses here in town that are having COVID positives. Most of the people don't live in Wilmington, but still they're businesses that operate here in Wilmington, and they have just positive clusters. So I think as people are starting to go back to work and get in their grooves again, this is what we expected to see. It's just so important to still please wear your masks and abide by the, not large gathering rules, and the social distancing is really important. And make sure that you get your flu shot. We have vaccinated almost 600 kids right now in Wilmington. And probably a little over 100 adults. We have another flu clinic tomorrow, and we'll probably have another one next week. So we've been really, really busy doing that. We've done drive-up flu clinics, which have been interesting, but really successful, I think. And all the feedback is that it's been really great. So hopefully we'll just continue to do that every year. But this has been a busy flu vaccination year, and we started really early too. Normally I don't start flu vaccines until almost November. So we're ahead of the game, and things are looking good and with the flu vaccine. So I don't know, does anyone have any questions?
But I think Mr. Bendel had a few as well, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Mrs. Newhouse. A question of the 17 or 20 that you have updated us on tonight. Could you give me an estimate of the number of those who are non-Wilmington residents who work here? Is it half? Is it a quarter? Is it?
Oh, no. So the 20 that I have are always, what I report on are always Wilmington residents. So none of those numbers include non-Wilmington residents. So I just know of I get reports from local businesses, and through our reporting system, if local businesses have a cluster, which is, we'd like maybe 3 people, we start to say, okay, what's going on there? So I have, right now, I have 3 clusters in Wilmington at businesses.
For clarifying that, so that actually those non-Wilmington business employees are in addition to the 20 that you've indicated to us tonight?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure, Shelley, you had posted, I think, last week, the pie chart with the age demographics. Is that something you're gonna be doing weekly as well?
Yeah, I'll continue to do that. People seem to like that, so.
With the school situation, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I noticed last week's pie chart seemed to have a pretty decent amount of kids, 18 and under, out of the 20. So is that something that could possibly impact the decision that we're facing for October 26th or whenever it might be?
No, not yet. You really have, if everyone had seen, we went from a green community to a yellow community, which means our percentage of positives was higher than normal. So you have to stay at, according to what the governor has posted, we'd have to stay at a yellow for 3 consecutive weeks to start to consider if we were going to scale back on anything. And that would go, if we went to red community. Even just because we went to a red community for 1 week doesn't mean that we would cancel school or scale back activities. We really want to see our trends, what they show. Like, we're going to stay for 3 weeks at a time. And it wouldn't just be a decision on my part to, if we ever had to close school. It's a joint decision with the superintendent, school committee, and DESI, and DPH, if we were ever going to do that. But our rates would have to, or our numbers would have to really be skyrocketing to do that.
Positives make us go into the red. Do you know, like, approximately what the positive count would need to be?
It's hard to give you a number. It goes by a percent based on the population, and they do it over a 2-week period. So, and their 2 weeks is different than my 2 weeks. I mean, I can do a 2-week period every day. So, today I can go back 2 weeks and report my numbers. Tomorrow I can go back 2 weeks and report my numbers. So the numbers will be different all the time. That's why we take into account a 3-week time frame.
Thanks.
But we're right on we were right on the edge of when we went from green to yellow. So we were considered a higher rate of positivity. So this week, we'll probably still stay at yellow.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, Shelley, just a question on the green, yellow, red designation. I know you don't take into account the nursing homes when you're giving the report of 20 active cases, but does the green, yellow, red designation, does that include the nursing homes? Is that why we would be moving from one to another, because you have to include them
It
all?
only includes the ones that are Wilmington residents. So we have a lot of nursing home residents that aren't Wilmington residents, that are coming from other communities. So that only accounts for if we have Wilmington residents.
Okay, it doesn't, I don't know if that makes much sense to me, but I guess it does to you in the public health department, because I think if someone's COVID or has the coronavirus, whether they're Wilmington residents or not, they're living in Wilmington, they're living at a nursing home, I would think that that would qualify, but better to the experts than myself. The immunization of the kids, you say, is going well? You had 600 of them out of about how many that have to take the flu virus?
I don't know our school age population, so, but that's the most that we've ever done. I mean, in a regular flu year, I'm at like maybe 280 for vaccinating kids, so we're up there.
Thank you. And again, Shelley, thank you for the work that you're doing for the community. Thank you.
Mr. De Palma.
Good evening, Shelley. I have one question. Are you finding more resistance from parents having their kids get the flu shot?
No, I haven't heard any, I have, from no one. So in fact, it's probably been the opposite.
Thank you. And thank you for what you're doing.
Ms. Newhouse, I did have one question for you. I saw that you had pushed out the DPH survey on COVID-19, the Community Impact Survey. I know that that's run through the state, so you wouldn't necessarily be notified if anyone from Wilmington had responded, but I was wondering if you had received any feedback on that.
I haven't, I put it out there on social media. It's an important tool for the state to see if they can gauge what's happening to families, to individuals during this whole COVID pandemic. So if anyone sees it out there, it's a good survey for anyone to take. Maybe I'll get numbers when they're all, I'm not sure. I don't know how the state's gonna break down the data. Maybe, they'll break it down town by town. That would be interesting.
Mr. Halter, do you have anything to add?
I do not.
Okay. Ms. Newhouse, thank you as always for your continued diligence in this. It's very much appreciated. right, so we move on to our 7:40 appointment with Chief Desmond of the Wilmington Police Department regarding the TIP 411 anonymous tip system. Good evening. Good evening, Chief.
Well, I appreciate this opportunity to come before you and just let you know of an opportunity that we're offering the residents. We seem to do, at least I believe, we do a very good job as far as our social media platforms, but primarily that's to get information out. What we're always looking to do or improve on is getting information back in. So what we decided to do is we partnered with an organization called TIP 411, and they've created a WPD-MA app for us, which is primarily the purpose you would use this is to give us direct information. You can do it anonymously. It's a free app wherever you get your apps, whether it's the App Store, Google, Android, or Apple. If you don't have a smartphone, a lot of people still have the old-fashioned flip phone. You can still text it. It's not just that. If you don't have any phone at all, which is hard to believe, but there are people who probably don't, you could do it through our website. So again, it's completely anonymous. You can leave your name and information if you want. I just want to stress the fact that nothing replaces 911. This is an addition to getting us information. If you feel something is serious enough that it warrants us to be notified immediately, you should call 911 because you always get a human that way. These apps are only good as the people that monitor them. Now, we will monitor it, but, you know, we try to do our best in live time, but certainly if it's something of a real important nature, we want you to call the station directly. But we do find, for whatever reason, sometimes people are reluctant to call. They think they're bothering us, or they want to be anonymous. We do occasionally get anonymous calls, but people know that's a little different now with our phone system because sometimes your address will pop up. So certainly this is a way for them to get, you know, not make themselves known, but give us the information we think we may need. You know, recently we had two separate series of car breaks, one a few weeks ago and then I think one over the summer. And we were able to make arrests in both those cases, primarily because of information the public gave to us. It may not seem like much to them, but when we piece it together, whether it's a phone calls, you know, about a car that, you know, might look suspicious in the neighborhood or what have you, when we piece it together with other things that are going on, it really helps us to take the action we need to take. And in those two cases, we made arrests, which aren't always easy to do in car breaks. And again, the public deserves a lot of credit for that. So we unveiled it today. We have a press release, I think, coming out this afternoon. I think it came out. And again, if anyone's having difficulty with it, it's pretty self-explanatory. You just download it, follow the prompts, and it'll let you know exactly what to do. You can create an account. I don't believe necessarily you have to. You can still download the app and give us information if you don't want to create an account. So we think it's just another tool, but I just want to stress that it doesn't replace anything else. We're not looking to replace the old-fashioned phone. And, you know, the other issue that I think I'd like to stress is the fact that this primarily is for a sort of criminal activity. This isn't probably the place to, you know, complain about your neighbor's fence being too tall or things like that. There's other avenues to make those complaints. So we certainly will take them all. Like any anonymous complaint, it gets vetted. We don't just take people at their word when it's anonymous. We certainly have to vet things before we take any action. But again, we think this allows the public to have greater access to us. And during these difficult times, you know, since COVID started, it's been harder and harder. And we just want this opportunity to maybe, you know, give the public greater access to us. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Any members have any questions? I'll go start this way, Mr. Palmer.
Good evening, Chief, and thank you very much. Will this be monitored 24/7?
Yes, it will be. But again, I want to stress that if it's something that needs immediate attention, they should still call. But there'll be someone available, whether it's the midnight shift or not, when a tip comes across, someone should be viewing it.
Thank you.
No, I just, thank you, Chief, for putting this out, putting this available to the residents. It's just another vehicle, I know, for your department and for the residents to to use, and thank you for that.
Sure.
So I have to say, when I read this, I had concerns for the resources.
Right.
And with the caveat that I had, I'm putting my attorney hat on and I'm putting my kind of state agency attorney hat on
Yep.
for a minute. I think it's great knowing that domestic violence is up, knowing that substance use is up right now, given kind of the state of what we're in.
Right.
But my concern for you and for your personnel is, I don't want to see this become kind of a weapon in a probate court matter.
Right.
Or, so I guess my ultimate question, I appreciate you saying it doesn't replace 911. Like there's an immediate concern, people should still be using the avenues that they've always used. You call the hotline if it's a child situation, you call 911 if it's a immediate safety situation. Do you have like an anticipated time frame as to when anonymous tips would be kind of turned around so that the community knows this is really more like I saw something suspicious, it wasn't something that rose to the level of the police could do something immediately?
Right.
Do you have kind of the data as to how this app is used elsewhere for the turnaround and the resources needed to be able to address the tips if they come in kind of hot and heavy initially?
Right, I guess it's, a lot of it is the nature of the tip, it's kind of be, our response will be specific to what the tip is. Where it's anonymous, it's not like we could call someone, immediately and kind of give them an update on it.
Mm-hmm.
Although what this app does allow, which I think is a great thing, is allows us to also push information out on all platforms. So it's tied together with Facebook, Instagram, and
Okay.
Twitter. So if we get a tip that we feel other people, other residents, should be notified of, we can push that out there.
Okay.
So in effect, they will know that the tip worked. But a lot of times, my guess is people really won't understand. They just, maybe see something suspicious, and they're not sure of what it is, and they'll let us know, whether it's maybe they think there's a drug, transaction in the neighborhood or something like that. And again, we don't really, want to see this for like traffic complaints, which is probably our biggest complaint. I'm sure we'll get them on this, and we're not going to ignore them, but we feel there's other, better avenues to, complain about traffic.
Will you report back if it does become an issue with like the personnel and, I just don't want to see, you guys do such a great job. I don't want to see something like this that could be a really great resource
Right.
suddenly become kind of a drain.
Yeah, no, it's, it's a trial thing. We've signed up to do this for 3 years, so certainly we'll evaluate it. If it's, becoming more of a burden on us and not really helping the community, certainly we can reevaluate at that point.
That's interesting. I'm kind of curious how it works out.
Yeah, we'll be collecting the data, so maybe I'll report back at some point.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, thank you very much for being here. I too want to echo what my colleague said. I think this is a tremendous resource that you're providing to the residents. So once again, another great example of yourself and the men and women of your department working with our community.
Thank you.
My question is along the lines of what you just mentioned, and that's the data. Will there be an annual tracking of these tips? Well, I know the annual report comes out and we get them.
Right.
We can see the number of particular type of crimes or this and that. Will this be culminated at the end of the year into a report as well?
Right, so that data will be collected. What we do with it, I guess, depends on a lot of things, because it is anonymous, so I don't want to, portray necessarily tips as being, actual crime data, unless we can, vet it and corroborate it. But yes, certainly the tips that are coming in, we will keep track of, and if there's a yearly report to be made, we'll submit that with the regular data as well.
Great, yeah, I look forward to seeing, a year from now, what the statistics are on the usage of the app. I did download it myself, in full disclosure. It seemed pretty easy, and so we'll see. I'll be ready.
Looking forward to our first tip.
Hands-free as well, while I'm driving.
Yes.
But thank you again, and thank you to the officers in your department who will have to take on this responsibility. It's just another added service to our community, so thank you.
Mr. Chair, just one follow-up. Chief, other communities, are they using this app as well?
We've reached out to communities before we decided to do it, and they speak highly of it. I guess a lot of it depends on the communities. One of them was Yonkers, New York, which probably has a little bit more of a crime issue than we would have here in Wilmington, but, the towns we have talked to seem to seek this value with it.
And it's all the same, it's all tip 411, no matter
Right.
what other communities using? if it's Reuben or Burlington or whatever, I don't know if they have it or not, but they would use the same
Correct.
designation,
Yes,
411.
correct. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, forgive me, Chief, if you mentioned this at the beginning, and I missed it, but the cost of this app?
So this is, we signed a 3-year contract, which was $6,000. We did not add to the budget. We used our existing funds in the budget, kind of move things around. We felt we should prioritize that. And again, we think if it's obviously not something that's not a value to the town, after the 3 years, we don't have to renew the contract.
So just to be clear, 6 for 3 years or 6 per year?
6 for 3 years.
Thank you.
Chief, I want to compliment you for, what I think is a pretty creative way to try and make yourself and your department accessible to residents that maybe either the victims or witnesses of crime. So it's something I certainly think that we should foster and really show around, because I think the more you put in an effort towards being accessible and building a relationship of trust with the community, I think the more effective you'll be able to be. And I applaud. This is certainly not the only initiative that you or your department are doing to foster that type of relationship, but this is really just another initiative and effort towards that goal. So my compliments to you and your officers. I did download it myself. I haven't submitted any anonymous complaints yet, but I'll probably just call you and annoy you anyway.
Yeah.
I did, so.
Easier.
So, but thank you, and I look forward to seeing how it works out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, ultimate goal is people who normally wouldn't maybe contact us will contact us, and that's, you know, obviously,
Yeah.
we'd like to see that, so.
Just one quick. Chief, will all this information that you'll be receiving from this, will that be all data stored too? It's not something that you would destroy at all? It will be sitting on the server, or?
That's correct. I don't think it's on our server. I think TIP 411 actually holds the data, but no, the data's not destroyed.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Chief.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chief.
Mr. Hull, communications.
Yes, first item under communications is just a summary of the budget schedule. The capital improvement budget is underway. The instructions have been sent out to department heads. As you know, we have a 5-year CIP budget, and so the next 5 years runs from fiscal 22 to 26. The expectation is that department heads will provide their updates by November 2nd, and this is really the first major element of the budget process, followed by instructions for the operating budget, with the expectation that those budgets will be returned in early December. And then we're in the midst of going through all the budgets, both operating and capital, in preparation for the budget submission to the Board of Selectmen at the end of January. Then, as you know, the Finance Committee meetings begin in earnest throughout the month of February into early March. There's a public hearing in the latter part of March, and then town meeting this year is scheduled for May 1st. I would just note, and I reference this here in the memo, that fiscal 2021, the state budget still remains a discussion. They are on a 1/12 budget mode. The expectation is that they'll have a final budget by the end of the month or thereabouts. And I actually just checked this today with our legislative delegation about where we stand on local aid, and it still appears that local aid for fiscal 21 is expected to be level funded, which is good news for us. But you know, I think 22 is going to be the tough year. From what I'm told, the budget forecasters at the state consults with estimate that revenues are down or will be down anywhere from 1.3 billion up to $5 billion. So those are sizable numbers, and I think that's going to have an impact on local aid in fiscal '22. Next is correspondence from Selectman Bendel, and I'll let him address this.
Thank you, Mr. Hall, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to give this board an update on what is going on with the Senior Center Owners Project Management Committee, the OPM for the Senior Center. On Thursday, October 1st, we had our first meeting of the Senior Center OPM Committee, and I just wanted to acknowledge those members. There are 8 volunteer members, and they are George Hooper, our chairman, Mrs. Teresa Manganelli, Mrs. Diane Allen, Mr. Paul Malorani, Mr. Jack Holloway, Mr. Mike Kachuk, Mrs. Terry Marciello, and myself as your designee to the committee. And as many of you know already, the town put out an RFQ in August, and we received 14 proposals. And after several weeks of reviewing the proposals individually, the committee met and narrowed the 14 proposals down to 4 as a group. The committee's next step will be to hold public interviews with the 4 finalists that we've selected. And in no particular order, the proposals that we've narrowed it down to are from P3 Project Planning Professionals, Colliers International, Hill International, and STV-DPM. And so this coming Thursday, we will have our first series of interviews with Colliers International and Hill International. And then next week, on October 19th, we will interview P3 and STV-DPM. So I wanted to also mention that the town manager is working closely with us. He was present at the meeting. He'll be at the interviews as well. And as we speak, members of the committee are taking the time to call references for the 4 finalists. I know that Mr. Hull was speaking with some of his colleagues in the cities and towns that these 4 finalists have done business before. So I thank him for checking on that. And it's been a very interesting dialogue between the group. It's a great group, I think, under the chairmanship of Mr. Hooper. And we look forward to having some really good interviews starting this Thursday. So they will be televised by WCTV at some point. And so we encourage members of the public to tune in. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions, but I just briefly wanted to update the committee, and so thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bendel. Any questions from board members?
I didn't really have a question, I just had more of a comment. I just want to thank you for the update. When, you know, all of this was going down earlier in the spring, I had kind of indicated I would like to hear regular updates, and I really appreciate you bringing this to us to let us know and let the community know that, you know, even in the midst of the chaos that we're currently in, that this is something that's still, you know, getting attention, and we're still moving it forward as best we can. So thank you for doing that for us on our behalf.
Thank you very much. And again, my colleagues on the committee are very engaged, and they're very excited about getting this process started, so I'm lucky to be serving with them.
Mr. Kara?
Yeah, just, do you have a time that the meeting start?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Kara. This coming Thursday, the agenda was actually just set out. We are going to be starting at 6:15 this coming Thursday night, but we will be starting with a discussion amongst board members. We need to choose a vice chairman of the board just in case for some reason Mr. Hooper was unable to attend. And then we'll be making sure that we have our questions in order. And thank you for bringing this up, because I forgot to mention that each member has been tasked with come up with 2 questions that they'll ask the applicants. And so we will kind of get ourselves organized publicly with the questions before we bring on our first appointment. So I would imagine that it'll be probably a half hour or so before we see the first, and forgive me, I don't have the agenda in front of me that was just set today, but once again, these won't be live. They'll be recorded and televised later on. That's my understanding.
Mr. Chair, just to, so to that point, and there was an agenda sent out at 6:15. The actual time, the start time is intended to be 6, so there was a revised agenda set up because the first appointment is 6:30, so that 6 o'clock will give the committee an opportunity to have some discussion about the questions, to designate a vice chair and so on. So the start time is 6, the interview's at 6:30.
Thank you for that.
Mrs. Palmer.
Start out with Mr. Bendel, thank you. I know this has been a long process, you've taken it, and with the other board members, taking the bull by the horn and get this thing finally going. The only question I have is, have the 4 that you've picked, has the town ever had any dealings with them at all?
Mr. Hull goes back a little further than I do here in Wilmington, but certainly in this capacity, but I don't believe so. Is that correct, Mr. Hull?
Well, actually, P3, in fact, we did work with them on the high school, the Shawshene School window replacement project a few years ago. So we're familiar with some of the players on that firm.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hull.
And I do want to take this opportunity to thank all 14 applicants. They were all very impressive in their own right. But fortunately for us, the committee was was a lot of the same preferences here when it came to these 4 finalists. It was amazing how easy it was for the group to arrive at these 4 finalists. So we're certainly looking forward to interviewing them to find out more, and I'm happy to, if the chairman will allow, to update you once again in the future.
Of course.
I only have one more question. The other question I have is, are these 4 participants, are they Massachusetts-based companies, or?
I believe so. I know that Hill International has offices all over, but I believe they have an office in Boston. I only know that because I was researching them this afternoon. And Collier's was the other one that we were talking about this afternoon. Mr. Hull, maybe you can...
Yes, I think each firm has an office in Massachusetts, in the Boston area. Some of them, as Selectman Bendel indicated, have offices in other states.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and I can also, thank you for asking, Mr. De Palma. I can also tell you that one of the things that each member was looking for, almost all the members were looking for, was experience with municipal buildings, such as senior centers. So that was one of the things we looked at when we reviewed all 14 individually, and the group, that was something everybody was looking for. So.
And the other last question I have is, do you know if these 4 companies are union-related?
I would imagine that may come up in the interviews.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you very much, Mr. Bendel.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Appreciate the information.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, next on the agenda is board to consider signing the warrant for the state election to be held on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. This is for the electors of president and vice president, senator in Congress, a representative in Congress, a counselor for the 5th District, senator in the general court, representative in the general court for the 19th Middlesex District, a representative in the general court for the 21st Middlesex District, and the register of probate for Middlesex County. There's also 4 ballot questions that will be on the ballot as well. So I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Motion made by Mr. Bendel, seconded by Mr. De Palma. Discussion? Seeing none? All in favor? Unanimous, passes. The next item on the agenda is a request of Jennifer Cushion and Julie Breen, co-presidents of the Friends of Field Hockey for the Wilmington High School girls field hockey teams, to conduct a fundraising car wash at the municipal parking lot, actually at the 4th of July building, on Sunday, September 12th, 2021, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., with a rain date of Sunday, September 19th, 2021. Certainly this is the earliest in advance that I've ever seen a car wash request, but our compliments to the Friends of Wilmington Field Hockey for their 11.5-month advance notice of their request. I'll accept the motion.
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Ms. O'Mahony,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Bendel. Discussion?
Just a question. It is well in advance, and I don't have a problem with it. But seeing how we're in the, you wouldn't tell by today, but Massachusetts is in a severe drought, and we're asking residents to be careful in watering their lawns, and and to watch out the usage of the water. Are we going too far out with this? Do you think we should just hold those dates for this group, but vote on it further on down the line? Just with the understanding, if we go through another summer the way we've had this year with the drought issues and, you know, us asking the residents to, you know, not to use the water for their lawn or for other purposes, and then we're having a car wash. And I know, you know, people need funds and to raise monies, and this is a great way for the kids to do it. All I'm suggesting is that we sort of block those dates off and then determine it, make that determination a little further down the line, so we don't get ourselves into a situation. I know that a few residents had called and said, why are you permitting a car wash at the 4th of July when we're in the middle of a drought? And that particular day, it rained on the poor kids that were doing the car wash. So I don't know how many cars they actually washed. But again, I have no problem with it. I just thought I'd throw that out there. You know, we're 11 months away, so I don't.
Mr. DePaolo?
Yes, Mr. Chair. A recommendation would be to approve it with a stipulation on it, drought conditions.
I think Ms. O'Mahony, you were the maker of the motion.
I mean, I'll amend the motion to say if there's any type of water ban that would prohibit a car wash fundraiser on September 12th or September 19th, we can put that caveat in. I mean, I think, I don't want to discourage them for being such advanced planners on this fundraiser. So I guess I would move to approve the car wash for September 12th with a rain date of September 19th, 2021, with the caveat that if there is a water ban that would prohibit such a fundraiser, they would have to make alternative arrangements.
My second is amended.
Okay. Further discussion?
Mr. Chair, the only comment I would have, and I don't know, you know, how they approach their fundraising effort in terms of budget and so on, but, you know, to the extent that they are estimating they're going to make, I don't know, $200, $300, whatever it might be, and, yeah, I think we have to, I would suggest the board needs to be mindful of when they finally get a green light or a red light on it, because it may impact, you know, they might decide to pursue other fundraisers if it turns out that there's some prospect that they might not be able to do this. And I think the point that Selectman Carr raises is a valid one. Certainly, this has been an incredibly challenging year for rain, and if it turns out to be a similar circumstance next year, it, I think, is a bit inconsistent to be allowing car washes while folks are restricted from using water on their lawns. But, you know, I guess the challenge is, you know, when do you make the call? You want to do it soon enough so that they have some ability to come up with an alternative, but yet you know, not being mindful of that.
Mr. Chairman, may I suggest that we reach out to the group and ask them when the latest they would need to know so that they could plan to advertise and promote?
Yeah, we could certainly do that. So Mahoney, if you wanted to.
I mean, I'm honestly kind of baffled right now, because my motion is a green light today, unless there was something so severe that would restrict it. And if we want to put a deadline on what that severity would be, you know, I can say we would have to make a decision to cancel it by August 15th, 2021, or, you know, because I'm assuming it's a fall sport. They're getting their budget together usually at the end of the summer to figure out what their needs are going to be, you know, but I'm not comfortable telling this group of students you have to wait a year when you know, through your parents have taken the initiative to get approval a year in advance, that you're now going to have to wait because we could be in a drought situation, given we're in the middle of a state of emergency and a pandemic right now. So my motion stands, and I guess I'll modify it to say should there be some type of water restriction that would impact it, we would notify them by August 1st, 2021, that they're not going to be allowed to do it. Does that make sense? Does that address the concern? But while still letting them realize, like, we're giving them the green light today. If there's something so severe that the town cannot allow any car washes, we will let them know. We will take the initiative and let them know by August 1st, 2021, that they're not going to be allowed to do it.
Second.
Further discussion?
Yeah, and again, I'm not opposed to it. I don't want to have that come across. I'm in favor of this fundraiser. I just think,
No, I get it. We're in a world now where we have to anticipate everything a little bit more than we used to, right? So I'm comfortable doing that. I just don't want to discourage them or put the onus back on them when they're asking a year in advance that we're then going to make them have to do more work next summer. You know, I'd rather take the responsibility that if we as the town don't believe they should do it, we will notify them by a date certain.
I believe Mrs. O'Mahony's amendment on that just covers it. If there's a drought, you can't do it, and if there isn't, you can do it.
Further discussion?
I would just only, and I certainly don't want to belabor the discussion, but to the extent that there are groups that, going forward, are seeking car wash dates in June and July, you know, I guess it's an issue to be addressed at that time, but, you know, it becomes a question of, to some measure, what is permitted and what isn't. If we're going into a drought period, you know, in May or thereabouts, you know, it's something just to be mindful of, that there are, you know, this has become, and again, I think it's certainly a good effort on the part of the different organizations, but has been the go-to fundraiser. We've seen certainly a fairly significant increase in the number of requests for car washes at the July 4th building, and I just think they need to be mindful of trying to treat everyone fairly.
Further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor of Ms. O'Mahony's motion to approve the request of the Friends of Field Hockey with the caveat that if there is a drought that would preclude that from happening or would prevent a car wash from happening, that the town would then contact the Friends of Field Hockey by August 1st, 2021.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All those in favor? Unanimous, passes. Next board to consider item is the request from different community groups to conduct events which require road closures. I'll go through these quickly. There's a request from the Wilmington 4th of July Celebration Incorporated for a 5K road race on June 30th, 2021 at 6 p.m. There's a request from the Soul Sisters Running Club for a 5K road race on Saturday, December 11th, 2021 at 10 a.m. There was a request from Wilmington Little League to have the street closure for the Wilmington Little League Opening Day Parade, which will be on Saturday, April 16th, 2020. It says 2022, but I presume that's a scrivener's error and they mean 2021 at 8 a.m.
2022.
Oh, they were requesting it?
Yes.
Okay.
Didn't we already approve 2021? Sorry, Mr. Chair, I thought we had approved 2021 earlier this year.
And the last request was a request from the Pan Mass Challenge for the Wilmington Kids Bike Ride for the Pan Mass Challenge on Sunday, May 22nd, 2022 at 8:45 a.m. We do have recommendations from the Chief of Police, the Fire Chief, the Director of Public Works, and the Director of Public Buildings, and all of them are in agreement or have no issues with the request. So we can take these all up as a group. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve all 4 of these applications.
Second.
Second by Mr. DePalma, on the motion by Mr. Bendel. Discussion?
yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm in favor of all 4 of these again, but in the times that we're living now, as we're all wearing masks and we're worried about an uptick with the coronavirus, we don't know what this is going to bring, or what's going to happen then. I would assume that Shelley Newhouse would be involved in allowing these to go forward, or possibly canceled because there's an outbreak of some sort. Should we be?
Yeah, I would say that, as was the case this year, certainly if circumstances, if we're in the same place when some of these events come up in June of next year and beyond, there'll be discussions with the groups, and Shelley will be involved, and, the event may have to be canceled.
So my understanding is the state guidelines, as they exist today, actually preclude these types of events from happening. So we would be approving them as opposed, or just from the standpoint of would the town permit it. But if the state does not see fit to change the stage of the reopening plan between now and these dates, then the state's guidelines would prohibit those from occurring.
Right. Yeah, whatever state guidelines are in place at that time will prevail.
Correct.
As long as they are aware of that, when we send an approval letter to them that they've been approved to have that event.
Yeah.
I think a caveat needs to be put in there that, states, public health, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts public health guidelines will be in effect.
Right.
Of some sort.
We can certainly do that.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous, passes. The next board to consider item is the board to consider adopting a remote participation policy. Just by way of background a little bit, back in July, I had spoken to Mr. Hull about a remote participation policy. Certainly since the governor's orders beginning in March that suspended certain provisions of the open meeting law that left us to having our meetings by Zoom for 6 months. The town does not, in a non-emergency situation, we've not met, I guess, the state requirements to permit members of boards and committees to participate remotely. This has come up in the past when, and it could be a member of this board or other committees or commissions in town. If a member is recovering from surgery or otherwise unable to actually physically make the meeting. But I think we are 7 months into COVID-19 response, and I think it is appropriate to at least take a look at how the town responded as an organization and see what we've done well and see what we have done that might be an area of improvement. I think certainly one of the things that I think the town has displayed a positive and good response, and that's by Mr. Fredette and John O'Neill, is having the infrastructure in place to conduct meetings remotely. This is the remote participation policy that was circulated does not just permit boards or committees to choose at their will to have a meeting remotely and in the comforts of their own home and not in an open and public place. A quorum would have to be physically present, and if any one particular member needed to participate remotely, they would have to notify the chair of that committee 48 hours in advance, and the standard would be that it would be unreasonably difficult for that member to physically be there. No member may participate remotely in more than 4 consecutive meetings or more than 6 meetings remotely per fiscal year. Again, this is by the draft policy that Mr. Hull has worked on. I did speak to Mr. Hull earlier today, and he had a conversation with town council And I think it warrants discussion as to what we want to do with this today, but the regulation, the state regulation, which is 940 CMR 29-10, would allow this to apply for all town boards, committees, and commissions, and that would actually include the school committee as well. It would not include the Commission on Disabilities, which would have the ability to make its own determination as to whether or not to do this. The current draft that's in front of you tonight, in Section 2, Sub A, the first sentence reads, "The policy applies to all members of boards, committees, and commissions under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen or Town Manager." Because we got clarification from Town Council that this would actually not just apply to boards, committees, and commissions that would be under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen or Town Manager, but would also include the school committee as well. I think that sentence should read, "The policy applies to all members of boards, committees, and commissions of the town with the exception of the Commission on Disabilities." So we could either vote on this tonight, or we could take it under advisement and have a revised draft circulated for our upcoming meeting in just under 2 weeks. But I wanted to at least have the discussion on Mr. Bowman.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and I appreciate the time and effort you put into this as well as the manager. I do have a concern when it comes to kind of dictating what other boards and committees will do. I understand that the majority of them fall under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen, but I like to remind folks that most of these boards are autonomous and that they operate on their own very well, I might add, and that I would feel uncomfortable, as the thunder strikes me down here as I say this, I would feel uncomfortable, telling a volunteer board and committee what they can and cannot do. We're very grateful to have all these volunteers serve on these committees, as well as all of you are volunteers and myself. But I would be inclined to say, that each board could take it up on their own. And, I'll just bluntly say that I'm uncomfortable telling the Board of Appeals what they need to do, or the school committee what they need to do. I understand the spirit of this, but I wanted to start by saying that I felt uncomfortable with that. The second question I had was in Section 5, procedures. And I think I know the answer, but I want to ask it to you anyways, is that any member who wishes to participate remotely shall give at least 48 hours notice or reasonably prior to the meeting. And so I guess that would be in an effort to try to help our friends in the IT department or WCTV prepare, because, if someone became ill the day before and needs to be home, perhaps they contracted COVID or they had an accident and fell down and they had to come in remotely, they may not know that 48 hours in advance. We've had in the past members travel for business and miss a flight on the way back. That's not something you could predict. So my guess is that, and I'll let you answer for yourself, but my guess is that that's so that we can give a courtesy to the IT department to send an invitation. And I understand there's some technological logistics that need to go into it if someone's going to be remotely. Is that the answer to that?
That is certainly the intent behind it, but I will read the remainder of that clause. So it's any member who wishes to participate remotely shall at least 48 hours or as soon as reasonably possible prior to the meeting. So
Okay.
if something were to happen within 24 hours, it's certainly not a bar, but it's reasonable is a subjective standard. So
Right.
if something were to happen closer in time to the scheduled start of the meeting that would preclude or make unreasonably difficult physical attendance at that meeting, that certainly could be accommodated, but certainly with doing so creates an added wrinkle of complexity in the logistics of actually having a meeting. So making sure that the IT department is able to accommodate the structure of that would need to be a consideration.
Thank you. And my third comment would be that I would urge my colleagues to take your you offered as a suggestion that we take it up at another meeting. I'd like to go back and talk to some people that are on other boards and see if they're comfortable with this. This is a big thing. Who knows how long this will last, these circumstances? I think post-pandemic, some of the things we've learned here are effective and they may not go away. You know, it's nice that someone, if they fall ill or traveling, will be able to call in remotely, and we've never really had that before. But I just want to reiterate what I opened with, that I am a little uncomfortable dictating what other boards and committees need to do. Thank you.
Mr. Howell?
If I could just note, just for clarification purposes, so in terms of the CMR, this is a consideration of this option is essentially an all-or-nothing proposition. So if the board chooses to pursue a remote participation policy, it has to apply to all boards, committees, and commissions, with the exception of the Disabilities Commission, as you noted. And the other point I would just make is it's essentially another tool that committee members can access. So if the planning board, for example, members don't feel comfortable engaged in a remote participation meeting, then members can choose to just not partake of that option. It really just creates an option that allows someone who is unable to be there physically to actually participate in the meeting. And that's really what it comes down to.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond to that?
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hall. I would just say that we have recently done this, and without putting him on the spot, we had a member who was unable to join us in person, and therefore we were remote. So, I mean, we didn't have this policy before. It was kind of common sense, as a courtesy to that member. They couldn't make it, so we went remote, and we made accommodations.
So just for context on that, currently we're still under the governor's orders, so this policy actually does not change anything until the governor's orders are actually concluded. So if that situation had, if that situation had occurred without the governor's orders in place, without any policy in place that would permit any remote participation, if a member was precluded from physically being in the meeting, then that member of this board, or whatever board it would be a member of, would just not be allowed to be there. And our hope is that we are able to approve some policy in some way, shape, or form, because the circumstances that would lead to a member of any board, committee, or commission not being able to physically be present for a meeting would certainly inhibit that member's ability to represent the residents of town through circumstances that are normally outside of that individual's control. My hope is that we can leverage the technology that we have demonstrated, I think, a capability of utilizing, so that we can allow the members of this board and other committees and commissions to best be able to participate if circumstances, which do occur from time to time, present themselves, which would preclude that individual from physically being in the meeting location.
So, if I may, Mr. Chair,
Ms. O'Mahony?
a follow-up to that, and then I have my kind of original question and thought on this. Let's say that I need to be quarantined, right? I'm going to put myself in the hypothetical, and I notify you as the chair that I need to be quarantined for 2 weeks and cannot participate. Can we now utilize this to, and I don't mean to use like a trigger word, but to create like a hybrid situation where I would be able to remotely come in, but you all could still meet in person? Or would it be that we'd all have to be remote again?
It would, so this would only really be in effect after the governor's orders
Okay.
are no longer in effect.
So this is for the future, this isn't for the current situation that we're in?
Correct,
This is more
correct.
once the world goes back to wherever it's going to be?
Yes, so the other members of board, committee, commission would physically be present, and a quorum actually is required to physically be present in the meeting location, which would be, again, open to the public and accessible, but whatever member was not able to physically be there would be allowed to, much like Ms. Newhouse was earlier, would be allowed to participate remotely.
Okay, so then, my original thought on this was the premise that, do we need to put a clause in here that if there's a state of emergency, obviously, we would have to follow, the governor's orders or, whatever it would be governing us at that time, or is that just implied and we don't need to spell it out? And my second point is, the only concern I had, I get, that we're dealing with volunteer boards and we shouldn't put, a lot of restrictions on them, or, govern them unnecessarily. But my concern was, in reading this, we don't really give, in the cover memo, it gives kind of guidance as to what would be acceptable to be remote. My concern is, given kind of how the world, again, has been, some people take advantage of the option versus other people who won't utilize it when they should. So how would we spell out to them that, illness counts and unavoidable business travel and unexpected emergencies all fall into that category? But, your friend's inviting you out to dinner and you realizing that you could bang out a board meeting on your way to the restaurant would not fall into that category. And I'm not saying that I would suggest anyone would actually do that on any of the boards that this would apply to, but that's my concern, is that if you're given the option, how do we make sure people are utilizing it appropriately?
So I think that would probably fall on the chair of whatever, if
Okay.
it's this board or another committee or commission, because the standard is unreasonably difficult to physically be present. So
Okay.
if somebody in your hypothetical called and said, my friends called and want to go out to dinner, I think it would behoove of the chair to have a pretty difficult conversation with that volunteer to say,
Okay,
you're going to have to disappoint your friends and show up to the responsibility that you signed on for.
thank you.
Mr. Chair, I would just note that language that you cited is actually part of the CMR, the difficulty to attend, I forget exactly how it's referenced,
Yeah.
but essentially
But
that
it
is
wasn't
the
in the
language.
policy. It might have been in the CMR, but I don't believe
No, it is.
we
It's
spelled
in-
it out in the policy that,
Section 2, sub B, only if physical attendance would be unreasonably difficult.
okay,
And the other point I would just make is, where this may be advantageous, a policy like this, is when you have a board, like the Board of Appeals, for example, and there's a public hearing, and as you know, depending upon the circumstances, whether it's a special permit or a variance, there's a certain number of votes required in order to, for the applicant to get approval. In order for someone to be qualified to vote, they have to participate in the meetings. If one member happens, to be unable to physically be present, if a policy like this existed, they could exercise, that member could exercise this option to say, gee, I'm in Dallas on business, I'm not going to be able to get back, but I can, electronically be present, I just can't physically be present, and that provides an opportunity for that member, when they're back in the, for the next meeting, to continue to participate in that public hearing.
thank you.
Mr. Bond?
To start out with, by doing this for all boards, you're just gonna make something uniform. Maybe we should table it also and ask for the opinion of the chairs on all the boards, and then come back with it. But we can't be dictated by, well, someone might be mad at this, someone may not like it. Times are changing. Electronics are more prevalent than ever, as we all know. And I will agree with Mr. Hull that if a vote comes down on a board and the board member is home but is attending it through Zoom or whoever they're using, you have a better chance of resolving the situation and moving on to something else, so we don't slow down the process also. But I would urge the chair to contact the board members and say, and explain to them that this is what we are doing, and we'd like your input. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Along the lines of Mr. DePalma, I would agree with you. I was thinking more on the school committee side to get their input as to whether they would be for this, because I guess now we're including the school committee, whereas before it was worded that we were not. I also agree with Ms. O'Mahony that should there be a state emergency clause put in this as well? Maybe we could have town council look at that, or is that superseded within itself? I'd like to know if there are other communities that have adopted this as well. And maybe through town council, does this conflict with the inhabitant bylaws for public meetings? I know that there's a section for public meetings. Should this be proposed as an inhabitant bylaw, or is this just a policy? Because I don't want to conflict with the public meetings in the inhabitant bylaw. So we should ask town council if this can just be a policy, or does it have to go to town meeting for a bylaw?
Well, I can tell you that there are other communities. I know Watertown is one community that has adopted. I happen to see reference to their policy, I believe, online. This option, it comes from modifications to the open meeting law, which is a state law that the Attorney General, I believe a couple of years ago now, maybe longer, established, that allows communities this option. So it does not require town meeting approval. It would be a vote of the Board of Selectmen, or
Okay.
in the case of a city, the city council.
So it would just be a policy
Yes.
of the board? It wouldn't have to go, it wouldn't conflict with the inhabitant bylaws for public meeting or anything?
No, in
That
fact,
we
it's,
have for the town?
no, I mean, the open meeting law really supersedes whatever constraints or rules govern meetings to the extent that they exist in the inhabitant bylaws. So the open meeting law is ultimately what prevails in terms of how we conduct meetings. This was a modification to the open meeting law to say, you know, under certain circumstances, you can, someone who cannot physically be present at that public meeting and would normally, under normal circumstances, be unable to vote and engage in discussion, if the town or city opts to authorize a policy like this, they would be able to do so.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not necessarily opposed to this. I'm not a computer guy, so you would have to tell me which button to press in order to film away. But a situation happened to me when you mentioned Dallas. I don't know if you were reading my mind or not, but a couple of years ago when Ms. O'Connell was the chairman of the board, I was stuck in Dallas because there was a snowstorm up here and I couldn't come up and I had to miss the meeting. But if this was a policy, maybe I could have participated, but then in lies the question is the material. So how do you get the material to that person who's out in Dallas within that day's notice? I suppose you could scan it and send it and the whole bit, but you know, there may be
Right.
some issues involved in that as well.
And there is reference, just to that point, that's a great point,
That's
about the ability to provide the material that's going to be up for discussion. There is reference in here to providing the material, again, as you say, scanning it to them. Or
I noticed in number 2A, the last couple of words, it says that should be made applicable to department head with the board. Maybe, I know we call you a chairman, not department head, so I don't know if, should say department head or chairman with the board. I know that there are some department heads that run committees, like Mike Woods runs the cemetery committee, so he's a department head, but Jonathan Eaton's a chairman of the board, he's not a department head, so I don't know if... I'd also note on letter G of the same number 2, letter G, which talks about the disabilities, there's all the way down towards the bottom, maybe it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about the sixth line up, where it begins with, "This means that if the chair wishes to participate remotely, he or she may do so, but may not then chair the meeting." And I think that that should be included with everyone, not just the Commission on Disabilities. And so that line needs to be incorporated somewhere. And I only say that because, let's say the chair is in Dallas and is stuck in a snowstorm and can't get up, but he can come into the system, and then all of a sudden the system gets wiped out and goes to black. Well, now we don't have our chairman. So I think that protects us if he's participating remotely, that, the chairman is part of the quorum. So I would think that would have to.
I tend to agree with your point. It can be challenging enough to chair these meetings and to do so from when every other member is physically present, but you're on a computer somewhere else.
So the provision governing this requires, except for the Commission on Disabilities, that the chair be present, physically present at the meeting.
Right.
So if the chair in that example was in Dallas, according to the remote participation,
they could not be chair.
They could not, the meeting could not take place because the chair has to be physically present in,
So Mr. Hall, if I could just point, so if you look at section 3, sub B, it says a quorum of the public body, including the chair or the person authorized to chair the meeting in the chair's absence, shall be physically present at the meeting location.
Right, so in that case, I guess if the chair was in Dallas, they would have to identify someone else to serve as acting chair, I suppose, in order to conduct the meeting.
Yeah, and that's usually the immediate past chair. So if Jonathan's out in California and he's stuck out there, the immediate past chair would be Mr. Bendel.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd go down in that order. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I certainly think that it's a very valid consideration because it can be challenging watching a bunch of floating heads on a Zoom screen to figure out which members want to ask questions or make a comment, but to do so when you're the only person that's participating remotely presents a more complex challenge.
I don't want to interrupt Mr. Kyra. I'll give you back the floor in just
Yeah,
a
go
second, but I do want to point out that at some point in time, we'll be back in room 9, and to your point, it will be, could be difficult to visualize that person who's tuning in remotely.
And then I just flip over to, I did have something about roll call vote, but that was already addressed in another section, procedures, I think. But under procedures, number 5, under B, the last sentence where it says the chair shall announce the name of the members who will be participating, I think the word remotely should be coming after that, participating remotely. And then my last comment would be under executive session. I would like to see the letter B eliminated altogether. Because what the letter B says to me is that the presence of another person at a remote location must be approved by a simple majority of the public body. So if I'm in a remote location and a buddy of mine is sitting beside me, I got to get a simple majority to have him sit beside me in an executive session. I don't like that. I don't think anybody other than the people responsible for the executive session should be part of that. So I think this lends to inviting outside people into our executive session. And unless I'm reading it wrong. But that's what it says to me. So I think if we're having, like we had executive sessions recently, and we had to say to everybody who was on that line, is there anybody there? We all said, no, there's no one here, just me. And you know, an executive session is just that. It's the members of the Board of Selectmen and those that are invited in, and no outside people. This B kind of indicates to me that, you know, if we want, we can have someone else.
Yeah, I don't think the intent was to include
And I don't
someone
think
off
so
the
either,
street,
but that's the
yeah.
way I interpret it. Maybe I'm interpreting it incorrectly, I don't know.
Okay.
I want to make sure that every member gets to speak if they want to. I have a suggested path forward, but I want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to speak and participate. So I do happen to agree with you, Mr. Kyra, on section 6, sub B, on striking the presence of another person at the remote location must be approved by a simple majority of the public body. With the other suggested changes, which is adding remotely to the end of the first sentence in section 5, sub B, and the addition in section 2, sub A, of the department head or chair in the last sentence, and changing under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen or town manager to of the town, with the exception of the Commission on Disabilities. My suggestion is that we table this for now. We then circulate the revised draft to all boards, committees, and commissions in town, and that includes the school committee, with a request that they send back their comments within 3 months, and then we could reconsider at that point.
And then one other thing I'd like to bring forward is, does this affect public participation?
It would not, so this is,
So public still has to come physically to the meeting for public comments? They would no longer be done remotely?
so this is, again, to be operating in the post-COVID, post-governor's orders world. So the members of the public would still be permitted to attend the physical location of the meeting to participate, or to listen in if they wanted to. This does not in any way restrict that ability. The ability to comment remotely would be, I suppose, an option of different boards, committees, and commissions, chairs going forward, but this would not affect that.
Thank you.
So do we have a motion one way or the other on this?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we table this under your recommendation.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bendel, seconded by Ms. O'Mahony. Further discussion?
No.
All those in favor? Passes unanimously. So the next three board to consider items have been portions, or I guess just talking points that have been mentioned during the last several meetings regarding committee appointments. The first board to consider item is the Selectmen's designee to the Inhabitant Bylaw Committee, just by way of, I guess, providing context. Back in, I believe, January 2017, when the Inhabitant Bylaw Study Committee was formed, then Selectman McCoy was designated as the Board of Selectmen designee to the Inhabitant Bylaw Study Committee. Mr. McCoy is no longer a member of this board. Ms. O'Mahony's appointment to that committee was then resident Gary DePalma, who is now, of course, a member of this board. So at this point, we have an ability to designate a member of this board to be the designee to the Inhabitant Bylaw Study Committee.
I would move to appoint Gary DePalma as the selectman designee for the Inhabitant Bylaw.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Yes?
Unanimous.
So do you want to vote for yourself?
You want to vote for yourself, or you're not confident? Okay,
I
Unanimous.
wasn't sure.
we'll make it unanimous. All right, so on that same committee, Mr. DePalma has not actually made an appointment to that committee because he was appointed as a resident. Now that he's a member, I can now announce his appointment to the Bylaw Study Committee. Mr. De Palma?
After thinking it over, I'm going to ask that the board appoint Michael McCoy. Mike is, we haven't seen eye to eye over the years, but still, he's got a lot of knowledge, and I would ask the board to support my recommendation that Michael McCoy be appointed to the Bylaw Committee, Inhabitant Bylaw Committee.
So this is just an announcement, so this is not up for us to consider,
Oh, okay.
so. Thank you to Mr. McCoy for his continued service on the Bylaw Study Committee. And the last board to consider item is the appointment of the same Michael McCoy to the Ice Rink and Recreation Facility Committee. So, just by way of context, when the Ice Rink and Recreation Facility Committee was formed, the original member of the board that was, I guess the original board designee to that committee was Mr. Kyra, who obviously remains on the board and a member of the Ice Rink and Recreation Facility. And Mr. McCoy was later added as a second designee to the Ice Rink and Recreation Facility Committee. Because he is no longer a member of the board, and his membership on that board was as a designee of this board, we now have the ability to consider appointing him as a resident to the Ice Rink and Recreation Facility Committee. Motion.
Well, I don't know that that's necessarily so, Mr. Chair. You have a committee that's been constructed, and there was one designee from the Board of Selectmen to be chosen, and they chose two. He's no longer a member of the Board of Selectmen, so nothing changes in the construction of that committee. So I don't see how this appointment is relevant.
All right, we have the board to consider item. I guess I'll put it to the floor if anybody cares to make a motion on this. Or we can pass over it. Are you making a motion to pass over,
No,
Mr. Kyra?
no, it died by lack of a motion, Mr. Chair. So you just move on to the next topic.
All right. Seeing no motion, we'll go to announcements. Does any member have any announcements?
Mr. Chair? First of all, I want to wish you and your wife a lovely anniversary this past weekend, and I know another member of the board has an anniversary coming up in October as well, so I think it's a busy time for my colleagues, so congratulations to you both.
Thank you, Mr.
And to your
Brown.
brides,
Thank you.
Mr. Kyra, Mr. Eaton. And a big birthday in your house yesterday, so I want to give a shout out to Hadley and your daughter, lovely daughter. But I want to take the time to congratulate Sergeant Kevin Kavanaugh, who was promoted to sergeant on the police department, and I was very honored to represent the board this past week, and congratulating him. Our chair was unable to attend, and he asked me to extend my well wishes. The manager was there, and I hope you don't mind, I extended our sincere congratulations to Mr. Kavanaugh, Sergeant Kavanaugh, and to his family. So we wish him the very best, and we congratulate him. Thank you.
So I want to put my glasses on so I can see Kevin. I just want to echo what Chairman Eaton started the meeting with tonight. Kevin, your mom was a matriarch in the town, not just in the Sons of Italy, and by, being the head of such a prominent, wonderfully civic-minded family in the town. But I feel blessed to have known her through St. Thomas and through the Sons of Italy. And I want you to know that, she will be missed by all of us, obviously not as much as you and your family, but there is definitely a loss felt by all of us in the town that I hope you recognize that we feel it, and we're here for you through this time, because no matter what her age was, it's always a big loss.
Thank you. Thank you.
And the second thing was I just wanted to acknowledge the fall sports season has started at the high school. You guys, get ready. I'm going to be proud mom moments all year, whether you want to hear it or not. I was very happy to be a part of the senior game for the high school boys varsity soccer this past Saturday, and I know that there were a lot of other senior games that happened. So it was great to see, even though it wasn't necessarily the way that these kids or their parents had envisioned those games would happen and those kind of celebrations would occur. As always, it's wonderful to kind of see the perseverance of getting through these times and still acknowledging those types of activities. So I just wanted to recognize, I think field hockey, girls soccer, and boys soccer had their senior games this past weekend. Thanks.
Mr. Conlon?
Start out with, I want to congratulate the two new firemen on the Wilmington Fire Department that just graduated from the academy. I wish you the best of luck. And also, Mr. Carter, I want to extend my sincere, heart-warming thoughts for you and your family. It's hard enough to lose a family member, but the fortunate part about this is that you were with her for so many years. God bless you and your family, and always keep her in your minds.
Thank you. Mr. Eaton, thank you so much for the thoughtful recognition and the moment of silence for my mom this evening. Words really can't express my thanks for the kindness, the love, the thoughts and prayers that this community has given and shown to my family. And really special thanks to my colleagues, to you guys, say you guys. My colleagues on the board, Town Manager Jeff Hull, Administrative Assistant Bev Dalton, beautiful flowers, the arrangements that you sent, the phone calls from Greg checking in and from Jonathan checking in, just a tremendous show of strength from this community that I could never have imagined. Maybe I should have imagined, because that's what Wilmington's all about, coming together in a time when a family's grief-stricken and loses its matriarch. But I having the chief and the deputy chief and the firefighters and the police come to the wake, and the former colleagues of the Board of Selectmen, those that I served with and those that I didn't serve with, it was just a lovely tribute to my mom, and I cannot thank you enough for your support and love over this past week. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. New business. You know, Mr. Hull, important dates?
Important dates, October 14th, a brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Again, October 17th, brush drop-off, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. October 17, early voting begins, Town Hall, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. October 18, early voting, Town Hall, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. October 18th, actually October 19th, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Town Hall. October 20, Town Hall, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. early voting. Again, on October 21, Town Hall, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. October 21 is a brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Early voting again on October 22nd, Town Hall, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Early voting on October 23rd, Town Hall, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. October 24, brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Early voting on the 24th of October, Town Hall, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. October 24th is also the last day to register to vote in the state and presidential election. Registrations are accepted 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. and then 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. October 25th, another early voting date, Town Hall, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. October 26th, early voting, Town Hall, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. October 26th is the next Board of Selectmen's meeting here at the high school large group instruction room, 7 p.m. October 27th, early voting, Town Hall, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. October 28th, the last day to apply for mail-in ballot. Also on October 28 is an early voting, Town Hall, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. October 28 is a brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. October 29, early voting, Town Hall, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And again, October 30, early voting, Town Hall, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. October 31 is a brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. December 3rd is the state presidential election. Polls open at 7 a.m. and they close at 8 p.m. As noted in many different forums, the Shriners Auditorium, 99 Fordham Road, is where all residents, regardless of precinct, will be voting. November 4th is a brush drop-off, Old Main Street, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Again, on November 7th, Old Main Street, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Selectmen's meeting, November 9, high school large group instruction room, 7 p.m. November 11th is Veterans Day ceremony, Town Common, 11 a.m. Town offices will be closed. And then a brush drop-off on the November 12th, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., Old Main Street. And again on the 14th, brush drop-off, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Thank you, Mr. Hull. So this week's salute to service, I want to recognize Matt Palermo, who is a 2012 graduate of Wilmington High School. He first got involved with our town's Department of Veteran Services in 2008 when Wilmington hosted the Moving Wall for the first time. Upon his graduation from Wilmington High School and enrollment at Endicott College, he joined the Massachusetts National Guard and has since transferred to the regular Army and is currently a captain in the airborne unit. And he is stationed at Fort Benning in Georgia. So our gratitude to you, Mr. Palermo, for your service to this country and this community. I also very quickly wanted to recognize that Isaac Tavares is a 12-year-old in Wilmington, and he requested donations for his birthday that he then donated to Liam Prigmore's Eagle Scout project honoring all of Wilmington's killed in action and missing in action. So certainly a display of maturity from a 12-year-old that I think is quite impressive and very much appreciated. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
A motion from Mr. Bendel, seconded by Ms. O'Mahony. A split second later. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Good night, everyone.